Buying a home? Don't panic. Just listen to the rest of this podcast. Welcome to Home Inspection Authority's Straight Talk Podcast with me, John LaForme. Are you a home buyer, a realtor, or maybe a home inspector? If you are, then this podcast is definitely for you. So let's get right into some straight talk about home inspections. Check. Is this thing on? Okay, everybody, John here from Home Inspection Authority. Welcome to my very first podcast. In this episode 1, I want to cover setting expectations for home buyers and their realtors who are looking at purchasing a early 1900s home. First thing I want to say is these homes are not new, even though they've been remodeled. So they come with a lot of unexpected surprises. So let's try to clarify that now. When I am going through my overview of my findings, the experience I have can be quite numbing. It's like, wow, everyone's jaw just drops. The amount of disbelief in their eyes is like, oh my God, you serious? And this is typically because, they walked into a house that was flipped or remodeled. So when they walked in the front door, all they saw was new drywall, new appliances, new electrical receptacles, new lights, new faucets and fixtures in the bathrooms. And no one's given any thought to, hey, what's holding up the house? Or, what's in the attic? Or, is my wiring that's hidden behind the walls, is it actually... is it new? Is it the original wiring? And that's the cause of all the shock and awe that I get when I'm delivering my overview. It's like, wow. But anyway, so I don't expect the buyer to understand all this. They're just buying a house. It doesn't mean they're home experts by any means. So don't feel bad about not knowing anything about the house you're buying. But it does help to do a little bit of research on it, maybe, if you have a chance, look it up online, just kind of read through what it might have. Are there any upgrades to the property? Has it been disclosed that maybe the plumbing's been upgraded, the electrical's been upgraded? These are the things you really want to pay attention to. So there's no, big surprise when your home inspector tells you that, this house looks great inside, but all your major systems are still original. Let's talk a little more about disclosures from the sellers. Oftentimes in the recent year or so, I show up and I'm like, oh, did anybody let you know that, the foundation's been retrofitted? And the first thing they say is, well, no, we haven't gotten disclosures yet. I'm like, really? I'm here to inspect the house and you don't even know what's been done to the house? So that to me is a little backwards. It's like putting the cart in front of the horse. So I just don't agree with that, and I think that's just bad business for a listing agent not to give the buyer's agent all the information they need before the home inspections even start. So I think that should be addressed between sellers and buyers, and there should be a lot of clarity on that before the home inspector shows up. Because if you don't have any disclosures and I show up at the house and it's built in 1901 or maybe a little later, expect to have some surprises and some shock and awe and some disbelief in your eyes when I start telling you what the problems are with the home. Seeing how homes are built from the ground up, let's just start there with the foundation. So the first thing I want to do is identify what type of foundation is under the house. Is it made of brick? Is it poured concrete? Is it boulders? Is it twigs from a tree? Who knows? But that's one of the things I want to point out for you right away, is let you know what kind of foundation you have. So as I'm inspecting it, I want to then determine the condition of the foundation. So there's a lot of different conditions that can exist on a house this old. And one of the conditions could be efflorescence. So efflorescence on the foundation is an indication that water's getting in from around the building, which is pretty likely to be present on any house this age. And that's a normal thing to find, honestly. I would expect to see that. However, has it been addressed in the recent years? Have there been drainage installed around the house? Has there been any rain gutters installed on the roof? So forth, to keep the water from getting under the house. The last thing you want is moisture in your crawl space. Another condition that we can find on a foundation this old would be spalling. Now, spalling is a much worse condition than efflorescence. Spalling is an indication that water's been getting in for a long time. And when spalling occurs, it means that the side of the foundation that's visible inside the crawl space, and sometimes you can see it on the outside of the foundation when you're walking around the house, is because the foundation is starting to deteriorate. And when that happens, you can see the rocks, the aggregate that's inside the concrete. It's exposed because all of the smooth finish of the pour has now just crumbled off, and you can literally see it building up, a little pile all the way along the foundation when you're underneath the house. Now, that there may require a foundation guy to do a drill test on it to see if he was able to drill it and actually try to screw an anchor into it. Would it hold? That determines whether or not your foundation may need some rehabilitation, reinforcement, or maybe a re-pour right beside it, a sister foundation, which can be expensive. So these are conditions that you want to know about before you make your final decision on the house. Your home inspector will not be able to give you a price quote on these repairs or replacements. Further evaluation by a qualified foundation specialist would then be recommended, so they can come out, give it a further evaluation, and determine what the cost for repairs or replacement would be. Let's talk about foundation cracks. Foundation cracks are pretty common to find on a home this age. Cracks are not all scary. Most of the time you just see fine hairline cracks in one or two areas under a house, or sometimes maybe 3 or 4 areas. But that's pretty common. I would expect to find that, and most home inspectors will probably agree with that. However, if you start seeing cracks that are, more than an 1/8 inch wide, reaching into 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch, or 1 inch wide, that's a bigger problem. You could definitely have some issues with that. So you might be wondering what causes cracks in a foundation. Well, that goes back to what I mentioned earlier about drainage around the building, rain gutters around the building, the age of the building. Has it have negative grade, which means when you're walking around the house, the dirt is sloping towards the foundation, which means when it gets wet, all the water sits right up against the foundation. That's the main reason why cracks happen. There's also a condition called expansive soil. This means the soil on your property has a lot more clay than usual, and when it gets wet, it expands, and when it dries, it shrinks, and it leaves behind shrinkage cracks that you can visibly see in the soil. This condition is not specific to early 1900 homes. It can happen to any type of home on any type of property. So just wanted to throw that in there because it is a possibility it may be found. This condition can cause cracks in the foundation, as well as lift and lower the posts and piers that run between your foundation exterior walls. And what that means is if you're walking inside the house and you notice you're going uphill in one area and going downhill in another area, those are some of the causes from expansive soil. I've literally seen wood columns and piers, posts and piers, where there's a gap, like a 1/4 inch gap in between the post and the pier, or the post and the beam above it, because it wasn't nailed together properly. So this can happen, and these are things that you can expect to find if you have expansive soil. This is not under every house, but it can happen. And here's the number one question I get asked on every home: is the house anchored? Is there bolts holding the wood sill plates to the foundation? Well, If you're buying a 1901 house or maybe a 1908 house, chances are you may have a brick foundation. And if it's a brick foundation, there is no way to anchor it because the brick and mortar will not hold any type of bolts. As soon as you drill into them, they'll just break and they will not do any good at all. So brick foundations are not ideal unless you have a lot of money to spend after you buy your house, because it could be very expensive to add a new foundation to the property. This can all be done. It just takes time and money like everything else. So if you're looking for something with a solid foundation, you may want to pass on the brick house foundation and find another one with a poured concrete foundation. I also want to mention I have been to homes with brick foundations that were skim coated with a concrete mortar or almost like a stucco finish to try to conceal the brick. So this is the importance of your home inspection and foundation inspection. Some people will try to conceal the brick, and sometimes they do a pretty good job about it, but there's ways of finding it. You got to just take a really good look between the sill plate and the top of the foundation, and you will see that there's brick, and sometimes you can see the outline of the brick in the skim coat because it's just too thin. So buyer beware. If there's a brick foundation, someone may try to conceal it. Very recently, I was at a house that was built in 1906, and when I first arrived, the realtor was very concerned about the foundation because the sellers would not answer her question about what the foundation was and what kind of material it was, and we actually found a brick foundation. So that explained why they weren't telling her what it was. And this happened to be a foundation that was skim coated, but they didn't do a very good job of skim coating it because I noticed the brick foundation right away. If you do have a poured concrete foundation under the home you're looking at and there's no anchoring, that's not too hard to fix. That's called foundation retrofitting, where the foundation professional will come in and install universal anchor plates, which is like a clamp that they bolt to the wood sill plate, and then they also bolt it to the concrete foundation, which keeps it secure. So in the event of a big seismic shake, the property will not be able to slide back and forth on the foundation. So that's a good upgrade to have. However, it's not a requirement in California yet. It's just a recommended upgrade to add that to your house. So if you're buying it and it's not been retrofitted, that's one of the first things I would do after you bought it. The wood framing in your attic also needs to be looked at. The rafters supporting the roof, and then all that weight transferring down from the roof onto the walls below, all that needs to be looked at as well. Oftentimes in a home this age, you'll find split rafters that might have been poorly repaired, or there's inadequate framing supports between the rafters and the walls below the ceiling joists, because understand the home was built a long time ago to a much more lenient building standard as compared to today. Multiple layers of roof materials may be the culprit for causing split rafters or damaged framing in an attic. It's not uncommon to find multiple roof layers on these flipped homes. I do find it quite often, actually. From the street, you might see composition shingles on the roof, but when I get in the attic, the first thing I see is wood shingles with maybe one or two layers of composition shingles on top. And that is just too much weight for the structure, especially if it's built in the early 1900s. So this is not a good condition to have. There is absolutely no benefit to having multiple roof layers. It does not make your roof any more watertight than one layer would. So if this condition exists on the home you're looking to buy, it's going to require stripping the roof of all layers and then re-roofing the roof correctly with one layer. Another condition you may find in this older home is knob and tube electrical wiring, otherwise known as K&T. So knob and tube wiring is not ideal to have. It's definitely something you want to upgrade and replace. And the reason for that is it's basically a first generation type wiring. that was original to the building's construction. It's not grounded, which that alone is a good enough reason to replace it. Typical condition of the wiring is the insulation around the wires deteriorated, exposing the wire. So if you were in your attic or under your house and you happen to touch this exposed wire, that's going to give you one hell of a shock. So that there is a couple reasons to replace it. And when I do see it on a remodeled house, that house may have a brand new electrical panel. And if you look inside the panel, all you see is new, today's type, copper non-metallic sheathed wiring. And wow, I think, hey, you know what? Maybe they rewired the house. But then after further investigation of the house, I look underneath the house in the crawl space, I look in the attic, and I'm finding knob and tube spliced together with the Romex that was added at the panel. So not a good install in most cases. I have yet to find partial knob and tube connected to updated Romex that was done correctly. It's always sloppy. It's always a fire hazard. It's a safety hazard. So that's something you could definitely expect to find in a home this age that's been remodeled. And in some cases, I inspect houses like this that were not remodeled, which may mean everything is original. Oftentimes, when I find knob and tube in an attic, there happens to be blown-in insulation present, which in some areas it's concealing the knob and tube wiring. Knob and tube wiring should not be in an attic that is insulated because the wire can produce heat from being live, and that they're being surrounded by insulation will not allow the heat to dissipate from the wire, which could lead to ignition of the insulation or wood members or anything it's in contact with. So a lot of times it is concealed, which means there may be more than your home inspector can see. So the whole house should be further evaluated for proper inspection of knob and tube wiring. What I noticed during my inspections with my clients, the home buyer, is that every time they see an electrical panel upgrade, they automatically think that the whole house is rewired. Just want to clear the air on that. That's usually not the case. So just because you have a new panel upgrade does not mean the whole house was rewired. Okay, so what kind of plumbing can you expect to find under an early 1900s building? Well, most likely we're going to find cast iron pipe. And that pipe was likely original to the construction of the building. So you're definitely going to want to expect to upgrade that after you buy the house if that is present. Hopefully, it's been upgraded to an ABS plastic, which is today's typical drain pipe application for a residential home. Sometimes you may find sections of cast iron connected to ABS plastic, which means only spot repairs were done, not the whole system was replaced. Some homeowners take the just fix what needs to be fixed for now. Other homeowners take the proactive approach and replace everything and just be all done with it. So that might be found, and that's something you may have to deal with. Now, moving on to the water supply pipe, which could be galvanized pipe, it could be copper, it could be PEX. Typically, what I find in a early 1900s home that has been flipped is still traces of galvanized pipe still in service, connected to copper or connected to PEX. I've seen all different kinds of scenarios. The ideal condition is to have all the galvanized removed. Galvanized pipe does one thing. It rusts from the inside. So if the inside diameter of the pipe is a half an inch, by the time it's all rusted in, there's barely a pinhole there. So that restricts your water flow, and it may cause rusty water at faucets from all the rust buildup in the pipe. So there's nothing good about keeping galvanized pipe. It's definitely something you want to get rid of. So if the house has a partial copper upgrade, the first thing you want to do when you move in is just remove all the rest of that galvanized and continue with copper or PEX, whatever you choose. Here's another popular unrealistic expectation during a home inspection. A lot of customers think you're going to inspect the plumbing underground between the home and the street. That is your sewer lateral, and that requires a separate inspection by somebody that has sewer inspection equipment, such as a camera. That pipe should be inspected. It's my belief it should be inspected on every house. Doesn't matter how old or how new the house is. I've found problems in the past with brand new construction and, of course, everything in between from 1900 to brand new. So I just want to clear that air on that one. That is not part of the home inspection and definitely is highly recommended on any house. I hope I was able to set some realistic expectations for you in this episode going into purchasing an early 1900s home. And the key takeaway from this I want you to have is get a foundation inspector lined up the same time you line up your home inspector. It would be very much worthwhile for you. It'll save you time going through your inspection contingency period before the close of escrow. Another takeaway from this should be getting a termite inspection done for all the wood framing on the property as well. And, your home inspector will cover most other stuff. I wouldn't worry about getting an electrician out there right away unless you already know there's knob and tube wiring. So let your home inspector determine that if you need an electrician to come out for that. But otherwise, I do have a YouTube channel that you can actually watch videos of some of these topics I covered today, breaking them down and explaining them better. And that's a Home Inspection Authority on YouTube. If you do check out the channel, please subscribe to the channel and you'll get notifications on new videos as soon as I release them as well. Okay, so I want to give a special shout out to the person who inspired me to start a podcast, Matt Neal. Matt is actually one of my customers who hired me a couple times to inspect 2 houses for him. And he really liked my service, and then he had a conversation with me and inspired me to start a podcast and share my knowledge and thoughts with everybody out there. So here we go. This is the end of episode 1. I hope everybody found this helpful and interesting and informative. And that's the goal here, is to inform everybody and make your home buying purchase process simpler and less stressful. Buying a home should be fun. So if you are buying a home in the Los Angeles area and you are looking for a home inspection company like mine, you can look online at homeinspectionauthority.com. And you can schedule online, or you can give us a call at 800-950-8184. And we can do general home inspections, sewer camera inspections, swimming pool inspections, indoor air quality testing, and mold inspections.